Hello, how's everyone doing? We're gonna start our first virtual hike of the 2021 wildflower season. My name's Shane Hanofee. I will be your host today. We're gonna head on down the trail and look at some of the early wildflowers. Like I said, it is definitely still early. It's only March 6th, so there's plenty more flowers to come at this location, but certainly the earliest earlies are out right now. And so we're gonna go take a look at them, talk a bit about the plants, and come on down here to the South Yuba State Park sometime. There is a parking fee. It does cost $5 to visit here, but it's totally worth it. One of the best wildflower displays in our area, certainly one of the earliest displays of wildflower owing to the southern exposure, and just a really interesting conglomeration of plants. A lot of natives, a lot of non-natives too. I mean, this area was used historically as a homestead, so there's like Osage orange and black locust and some other kind of homesteady trees around. But yeah, why don't we go look at the flowers? Sound good to you? Okay, so definitely one of the harbingers of spring in this area is our western buttercup. This is Ranunculus occidentalis. I'll talk a little bit. We have a few different kinds of buttercups that look alike, and really, if you want to key them out, you need seeds. You got to look at whether the seeds are smooth, how round they are. There's a little beak on the end of them. You need to take note of the shape. But we can use a little gestalt here and determine that this is indeed Ranunculus occidentalis, because number one, it has 5 petals. The closest lookalike usually has closer to 10 petals. But this is not a hard and fast rule. Even some of the ones in this population I'm looking at right now have more than 5 petals, so it's not immediately reliable. But what you can look at are the leaves. So a lot of the time, when you see these leaves here, which have 3 lobes, and then each of those lobes is kind of toothed or divided, these are the lower basal leaves. They're coming out of the bottom of the stem here. And then as you rise up on the stem, you'll see these cauline leaves only have the 3 lobes, and so they're not as nearly divided. They're a lot skinnier, right? They're very linear. And so I use that pretty much to determine, at least before there's seeds, that this is Ranunculus occidentalis. And while I'm down here, check this out. Look at that. That's a little Luzula species. I don't know which Luzula species that is. They're commonly known as the wood rushes, and kind of looks like a grass. It's got these like grass-like blades down at the bottom. But then as you rise up and look at the flowers, those are kind of ornate for a rush, aren't they? Beautiful yellow anthers. So yeah, interestingly, Luzula are out already. So I've stumbled upon this nice patch of Amsynchia. We call these fiddlenecks also. Which is because they have this kind of curly Q flower. Let's see, there's a good one right there, which we call a Scorpioid Inflorescence. That's because it looks kind of like a scorpion's tail, the way it curls over. It's a really common flower form in the family that this belongs to, which is Boraginaceae, the borage family. And likely, I did some measurements before I started videoing. You actually need to measure the flowers of these in order to tell the species. I believe this is Amsynchia intermedia, but a lot of people actually treat Amsynchia intermedia as a subspecies of Amsynchia menziesii, which is another one that does occur around here. Jepson even notes that it's probably worth treating them as the same species, but for now they still have it split up. And so I'm going to go with Jepson as it's currently referenced. And while we're over here, we might as well come take a look at these guys over here. Another member of the Boraginaceae. We have a popcorn flower, and popcorn flowers are extremely difficult to tell to species. Beautiful little white flowers. Another member of the borage family, but in order to identify the species, you need the seeds. There's no other way around it. And these are too early. There's not any seeds yet, so we're not going to be able to tell which one it is. I can tell you right now, it's a Plagiobothorus species. That's about all I know until there are seeds. And, we also have this beautiful member of the Brassicaceae, the Brassica family. This is called Fringe Pod or Spoke Pod. And there are little flowers at the top here, little tiny flowers. But the more showy part are these seeds. The seed pods. Everyone loves a good fringe pod. Look at those perforations in there, right? They have little holes. And you see this peduncle right here, that's the little stalk that holds the flower and then the seed to the main stem. See how it has like a straight curve to it? Like a solid curve. There's no, it's not sticking up, it's not sticking straight out. That says to me that this is actually Thyssanocarpus curvipes, which I think they call the sand fringe pod, which I'm not sure where it gets that name from because it grows kind of in grasslands, at least around here. But yeah, really, really beautiful plant where the seeds are the showy part, not so much the flowers. Well, what do we got here? This certainly looks like a black oak, right? But it's still March, and all the black oaks haven't even begun to leaf out yet. So why does this one, as a deciduous tree, still have leaves attached? And that's because this is not purely a black oak. This is what we would call an oracle oak. It is a hybrid between the black oak and the live oak. So it's only partially deciduous. You can see there's not a ton of leaves on there, but they're still hanging on. They're still green. And they're a lot thicker and waxier than the normal black oak leaves, but they still have those lobes with the little pointed tip, which is, you know, distinctive of black oak genetics being involved here. So yeah, oracle oak, Quercus morehouse, one of the named hybrids, and you'll find these actually pretty commonly where the two species overlap. So where you have black oaks and where you have interior live oak, you'll get these hybrids every once in a while, and it just goes to show you that oaks are very plastic. They're very hard to ID. There's a lot of gene transfer happening, and so yeah, you can try your best identifying these oaks, but sometimes there's weirdos like this oracle here. Well, it just seems to be the time for Boraginaceae to shine, because we have another member of the borage family in full flower here. Got little tiny white flowers. We got this distinctive lobing to the leaves, and all the little lobes will have little tiny white dots on there. See that? That is pretty distinctive of Nemophila heterophila, which is, I think we just called like the white flowered Nemophila or something like that. A really uncreative name, but it's really beautiful. It grows in these gorgeous patches a lot of the times, and yeah, get a close-up look at that flower there. Some blue colored stamens, all right? Pretty interesting stuff. All right, let's keep moving. So this is one of our more widespread and common trees right here. It's the California Buckeye, Aesculus californica. It leaves out really, really early in the season, and then in response to heat, it will drop its leaves and just keep from that water content from evaporating out of the leaves. You know, plants lose a lot of moisture out of their leaves, so it's just evolved to our hot, dry summers by just losing those leaves early, and then it'll send them out early as well and try to capture some of that sun before the other plants get a chance to shade it out potentially. But what I wanted to point out here is this really interesting phenomena where some of the bud bracts are growing leaves of their own. You know, so you can see the normal leaves right here on these stalks, right? But then there's leaves forming on these little bud bracts, you know, coming right out of the stem. So this is a pretty common phenomena, but unless you're looking really close at these, you might not notice it. So take a closer look at those bud bracts next time you find a California Buckeye. Oh boy, we get to talk about two vining plants that are early flowers. The first one here, this is Aristolochia Californica, or California Dutchman's pipe. These gorgeous, gorgeous little flowers, which they're said to have the smell of, I think, like rotting flesh, because they're actually pollinated by gnats and flies, and they want to attract those insects to get inside of that little tube right there and bounce all around and get covered in pollen and fly off to the next one. I never detect that smell personally, but maybe someone with a more sensitive nose than me can pick it up. In any case, it's a wonderful plant to have in your garden. Certainly the smell isn't overpowering. You're not going to smell it at a distance or anything like that. And this is the only host plant of the pipevine swallowtail butterfly. So a lot of the times you will find a little bit later in the season these plants just swarming with these really bizarre looking, almost fake looking caterpillars that are really dark colored with like reddish spines on them. Oh, look at this little baby right here. Little baby Dutchman's pipe flower. Really gorgeous plant. You know, the first time I had ever seen this plant when I first got to California, I could have sworn it was a carnivorous plant. Kind of looks like a pitcher plant, but that's not the case. They don't need to predate on any insects. Just gorgeous plant, really common in the river canyons. Then we'll move over here and we will talk about this vine. These beautiful pomade leaves. We got flowers growing up on a stalk. And if we look at the side view of those flowers, we can see that they're relatively flat. Now there's another species that looks like this that has bell-shaped flowers. So you always want to check the back of the flower. Simply the fact that this flower is flat points to the fact that this is Mara fabaceae. This is the common manroot, and it's a vining plant, you can see, heading down in the ground. Emerges really early, dies back below the ground, and all of these vines right here, if you can see that, are attached to an underground tuber that can weigh 100, 200 pounds. So it just, every year, sends up these vines, climbs way up the other plants. Some beautiful tendrils right there. Captures as much energy as it possibly can from the sun, and then dies back below ground again. And the only other thing I really want to point out here is, let me see if I can find a good example. Okay, so on the stalk, you have male flowers. So these simply have stamens inside. There's no female parts. There's no style, no stigma. Just male flowers. And then if you come down and you look in the leaf axils, that's where the female flowers are born. So these ones just have a big fat stigma in there. And so yeah, they have separate male and female flowers, but on the same plant. So technically that's still a monoecious plant. The opposite being dioecious. And dioecious plants have separate male and female individual plants entirely. But yeah, they just separated out their different flower types. Look at those tendrils. Those gorgeous little coils. So yeah, 2 vining plants of the lower elevations in California. Aha, so a little while ago we showed you a Mara species, which was Mara fabaceae, and I mentioned how the flowers are flat on the backside, and I happened to come across the other species that you'll find in this area. See how it's bell-shaped on the back of the flower and not flat? This right here is the tall manroot, which is Mara watsonii. It still has the same flowering structure with the male flowers up at the top, and then down at the bottom there's a little female flower. That one's kind of dried up already. Little female flower at the bottom of the stalk, male flowers at the top. The leaves are also slightly more lobed. So the leaf difference, and then once these are in fruit, oh man, you can definitely tell the difference. This one they're like little pumpkin looking green fruits with darker green stripes, and all Mara fruits have like prickles on them, but this one has really sparse prickles compared to Fabaceae has a lot of prickles going on. So yeah, pretty cool that I found both species. They definitely grow together, so you always got to look at the back of the flower there. Bell-shaped is Watsonii, and flat is Fabaceae. Pretty cool, wild cucumbers, manroots, another big tuber under the ground there. All right, let's talk ferns. This one right here is one of my favorite ferns. This is Pelea mucronata. This is the bird's foot cliffbreak. You can check out those really awesome wiry black stems. That's a common trait in the family Pteridaceae, which this one is a member of. And you'll notice that it is, let's see, we got the main stalk right here, and then we got these stalks coming off of it. That means those would be pinnate fronds, and then you have the little leaflets coming off that. So this is twice pinnate. You know, it's really important to count how many times the fronds are divided. And then if we were to look at the underside here, let's see, is it even going to come out? We can see that the leaves are folded under, and that is basically, all the spores are going to be born underneath those leaf folds, and that is called a false indusia when that happens. And that's opposed to a true indusia, where it's basically like a fleshy membranous cover on top of the spores. But this one just folds the leaf over, and so that's a false indusia right there. Okay, we got another member of the Pteridaceae. which you can tell has a wiry black stem. Really interesting sort of pentagram shape right here. And then we turn it over and we get a golden spore-bearing surface. This right here is Pentagramma Triangularis, the goldback fern. Really common, really hardy fern, can grow in hot, dry areas, rocky outcrops, just is found everywhere. And then we have this right here, this plant right here. Kind of looks like a moss, right? But this is not a moss. This is a Fern Ally. This is a Selaginella. And from looking at it a little closely earlier, I could tell that this is Selaginella hanseni. And what you're looking for is all these little leaves on here. Selaginella hanseni, some of them, or at least part of some of them, will have red coloration to them. And so that can tell it apart from the other possible Selaginella that we might have in this area. And then we have a third species at the real high elevations, but we're down pretty low right now, so I don't think we're going to see that. But yeah, believe it or not, this is a Fern Ally. And then over here, this is the exact same plant, but it's all dried and curled up. You know, we haven't had a lot of rain this year, and this plant will just sit in this dried, curled up state in a stasis and await for rain, and then will instantly resurrect itself back up and start photosynthesizing again. So another common name for this plant is resurrection plant, although a lot of plants display that behavior, and so we call a lot of plants resurrection plants. But this is our local resurrection plant, Selaginella hanseni. Gorgeous little Fern Ally. Here we've got a scene of a whole bunch of really wide, kind of glossy, grass-looking leaves, right? Kind of look like a big old grass, but this is not a grass at all. It is a monocot, but it is not in the grass family, Poaceae. This is what's called a feeder leaf, and so this is attached to a bulb underground, and what the bulbs do is they send up these feeder leaves to capture all of the sun they can possibly get, and they store energy in that bulb, and if they can get enough energy, they will send up a flowering stalk. And let's see, oh yeah, here we go. Here's one attached to the feeder leaf, and you can follow it up. And we don't have a flower quite yet, but we certainly have a flowering stalk starting. And pretty soon, this right here will become the fairy lanterns, Calicortis albus, beautiful white Calicortis, related to the Mariposa lilies. So nice little population here of those feeder leaves. So yeah, not all that appears to be grass is grass. We've got a few plants here worth talking about. First one, I think a lot of people will recognize right here. This is our blue dix. And I'm sorry to have to be the bearer of bad news, but they recently changed the name of this. It used to be Diclostoma capitatum, and they changed the name to Dipterostemen capitatus with an S at the end. And the reasoning behind that is twofold. Number one, they found out that this is genetically distinct from the other Diclostoma species that we have in the area. And so it doesn't make sense to keep it in the same grouping with those ones if it is so distinct. And then there's a morphological reason too, which, you know, I can't really get in the flower there, but if you were to dig into the flower, you would find out that these actually have 6 stamens. And Diclostoma, all of the other Diclostoma, have only 3 stamens. So if you do want to know the difference between Dipterostemen and Diclostoma, look inside the flower, count the stamens. Gonna have 6 on the blue dix and 3 on the wild hyacinths, the other ones that we call Diclostoma still. And then over here, we have a poppy. And our theme is, of today is basically not all that glitters is gold, right? So not all poppies are California poppy. What you want to do is turn this over and look at the receptacle, which is this little kind of bowl-shaped tube at the bottom of the flower. California poppies are going to have a ring there, and this one clearly lacks the ring, so it is not California poppy. The next thing you want to do is look at the flowering stalk. Does it have cauline leaves? Does it have leaves growing along the stem? Or are they all basal? Are they all down at the bottom? And this one right here does have cauline leaves. We have leaves coming up the stem. See that leaf right there? So that's going to point to the fact that this is actually Eschalosia cespitosa, or we would call this the tufted poppy. So yeah, we actually have 3 species of Eschalosia in the area. So gotta look a little closer than you would imagine. And we saved the least showy for last. We have a shrub right here, which I think a lot of people, it's an evergreen shrub. I think a lot of people would think that this is an oak, but it is not an oak. It's not even closely related to oaks. This is actually more closely related to Ceanothus. This is a rhamnus species. This is Rhamnus ilicifolia, the hollyleaf redberry. And once it flowers, you can really tell the difference between this and an oak, because it'll have these little tiny white flowers, and then eventually the whole shrub will be covered in red berries, hence the name. Hollyleaf, red berry. And yeah, the oaks, obviously, they have acorns. They don't have berries. They don't have red berries. So it's pretty easy to tell when it's in flower, but at this point, it's understandable. Someone might think this is a little scrub oak, one of the oaks with the shrub form and the smaller leaves. But give a little closer look next time. You can eventually learn how to recognize the two, even when there are no flowers or berries. All right, the first Facilia of the year. We got this beautiful white-flowered Facilia. Check out those leaves over there. Grows in these rock crevices at the lower elevations, and the flower is really interesting. It's white, but it's almost like dirty or dusty, right? And this right here is Facilia cicutaria, the caterpillar Facilia, named such because it also has a Scorpioid inflorescence, like the Amsynchia and like the popcorn flowers. Here we can actually see that pretty well demonstrated right there. It kind of curls over, right, like a scorpion's tail. But so a lot of people think that kind of scorpion's tail flower, it looks like a furry caterpillar or something like that. I think that's where the name comes from. But yeah, very happy to see it early flowering in this area, probably owed to the fact that we're right on this rock face right here. And so it's a southern facing rock face, getting a lot of sun. The rocks are heating up, providing extra heat for the seeds and for the plants to just get a little further ahead of everything else. So yeah, anywhere at the lower elevations, you might find these growing in, along the side of boulders or on rock faces. It really, really likes rocky areas. Check it out, we got more bird's foot fern. Got more Mara, more blue dicks. Plants really love these rocky exposures. Here's a stately example from the Buttercup family. It's related to those buttercups we looked at earlier. This is a Delphinium species, a Larkspur. And this one right here is Delphinium patens, the Zigzag Larkspur. And check it out. Check out this flower morphology. You got 5 petals, but then if you turn the petal, you got a spur coming out of the back. And so all the nectar is made in the back of that spur. So whatever pollinates these, whatever visits them, butterflies and such, will stick their little tongue, their beaks, whatever it may be, into the back of that flower to get the nectar, which makes them get really up close and really mess around in those flowers and dislodge all of the pollen or dust the stigmas with whatever pollen they may be carrying. And so check out the leaves. They got these palmate leaves here. Kind of shadowy, but I think that'll come out. Yeah, palmate leaves at the bottom. Cauline leaves are more thread-like and linear. See that? Very similar to the buttercups. And yep, same family, Ranunculaceae, Zigzag Larkspur. Well, here's a gorgeous little flower in the saxifrage family. This right here is Micranthes californica, California saxifrage. You can recognize it by its sort of open flowering form, right? There's another species that we have where it's sort of clustered. All of these flowers are in little clusters at the ends. It's not quite so open there. And then you'll want to look at the leaves. Leaves are very important for Micranthes. Beautiful flowers. They are hairy, and they have these toothed edges, right? So the other species that kind of looks like that, denser flowers, doesn't have those tooths, not quite as hairy. But yeah, Micranthes californica, really gorgeous plant. Pretty common. You'll find it a lot on rocky ledges and areas where it's wet, like close down by the water. Gorgeous little saxifrage. All right, let's talk Sanicles, early flowering member of the carrot family. You can see this one right here. It's got yellow flowers. This one's also got yellow flowers. But then down next to it, we have one with purple flowers. And over here, also has purple flowers in full antherific glory right there. But you know, the thing is, flower color doesn't matter with these. These are both the same species, whether they have yellow flowers or purple flowers. What you actually want to look at is the leaf. The leaves are the diagnostic factor. And specifically what you want to look at is on these leaves, see that stem in the middle and how it has these wings? It's very wide, and it's got these toothed wings on that stem right here. This is what makes this identifiable as Sanicula bipinnatifida, the purple sanicle. So even with yellow flowers, it's still the purple sanicle. There's another one where that center rib there, that mid-rib, is like very, very, very skinny. That one also has yellow flowers. That's the poison sanicle, which has a confusingly similar name as bipinnata. So this is bipinnatifida. The other one is bipinnata. They don't make it easy on us. But yeah, purple sanicle is what we got here, whether it's yellow or purple flowers. So flower color, not at all important. So here's a little yellow composite flower, a member of the chicory tribe, because it only has the ray flowers, kind of like a dandelion. And these really, really long phyllaries, those little green bracts that are below the flowers, that stick out past the petals, right? So this almost looks like it's a yellow salsify, right? Like one of those invasive species that we get, the oyster plant. But salsify is much larger than this one. And check out these leaves. Very linear. What we're looking at right here is actually a native species that we call Europappus lindleyi. You would walk right past this and just think it's another one of those darn yellow composites, right? But this one is really noticeable when it's in seed, because the seed have these structures, these papery structures called a pappus attached to each seed. Think of the like fluff of a dandelion. That's also a pappus. It's useful as a seed dispersal method for members of the sunflower family. This one has these very long, broad pappi. I don't know what the plural of pappus is. That make this really stand out when it's not in flower, when it's already gone to seed. But with a little practice, you start to recognize, oh yeah, it's that little, it looks like a little salsify. Salsify. Not exactly sure how you pronounce that. Check out those anthers sticking up there out of the top of the flower. But yeah, gorgeous little native flower that we get to all enjoy. All right, what we got here is a little Primula species, one of our shooting stars, formerly in the genus Dodecatheon. And really, the diagnostic feature is down here at the basal rosette of leaves. You can see these ones are quite round. There's a look-alike in Primula clevelandii, but Primula clevelandii will have much longer, skinnier leaves. And so really what you want to do is take the measurement of the full leaf and take the measurement of the width, and the clevelandii will be more than 2 times long than wide, and Hendersonii, which is what this is, will be less than 2 times. And so this part down here is the petiole, so you really just want to measure the leaf itself, not the petiole, which you can see it pretty abruptly gets skinnier right here. So from about that point to that end, that's the length of the leaf, that's the width of the leaf, and you can see it's not more than 2 times longer than wide. So we have Primula Hendersonii, and what's really cool is the flowers nod. They point down, right? So here are the anthers. You can see a little stigma sticking out there. But then once they're pollinated, they point up. And so you can see there's the anthers again, and the stigma is hanging on there and sticking out of the flowers. And then this will expand into a little capsule, and the seeds will drop out of there. Pretty cool. When the flowers first start, they're pointing up, then they nod when they're ready to be pollinated, and like bees and other things will hang on to the bottom of this flower here and jiggle it all around. And then once they're pollinated, they point back up again. Really interesting form. Yeah, Primula Hendersonii. Here we are with one of our native succulents. We have Dudleya Samosa. The canyon live forever. It's our only Dudleya species in this area. It really loves to grow kind of vertically on rock faces, especially abundant in the river canyons, but sometimes you'll find them at the top of like the lower mountains, at the lower elevations. Oh look, there's a little baby right there, little baby. But yeah, these are constantly under threat because people want to pick them and take them home and try to grow them, but they will probably die if they're not given a vertical rock face to grow on. So don't take the Dudleyas. And you can see it's setting up a little flower stalk, so pretty soon there's going to be these brilliant red and yellow flowers coming out of this thing. But anyway, I think that's going to wrap it up for us today. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed the wildflowers here at Bridgeport. Give us a like on Facebook, check out our Instagram, join our forum, go to our website, all of that good stuff. And if you want to see more virtual hikes, we have a whole slate planned for this next year, so subscribe to our channel. Okay, have a great day, everyone.